Hey everybody, welcome back to Digital Artcast. Thanks for tuning in. Another awesome episode heading your way with some great artists from around the world. Thanks again to everybody who has subscribed so far. We are close to 1,500 subscribers and we're looking to hit 2K hopefully in the next couple of months. Loving the format of these interviews so far. It's been great with these informal chats, and this particular artist we had on recently was someone that I really wanted to get on and have a chat with about his work ethic, his whole approach to learning and his prioritization to his tasks in his life. So without further ado, let me introduce this amazing guest we have today, Mr. Glauco Longhi. Hey Glauco.
Hey, how's it going, man? Thanks for having me here and for the kind words.
Yeah, of course, man. More than worthy of that. Most people know your work, but for those who don't, could you introduce yourself?
Yeah, of course. So I'm a lead character artist working at Sony Santa Monica right now. I started working in this industry for about 13 years now. I'm originally from Brazil, so I moved to the US 5 years ago to work at Naughty Dog. They relocated me and my wife. But before doing that, I was running my own makeup effects studio. I've done a little bit about everything in the entertainment industry, CG related. There's a bunch of sorry, that was my dog. There's a bunch of videos and like podcasts of me talking about my entire journey and my history and all of that, or my story. But you can dive into that later. But
yeah, cool, man, awesome. Again, I think you've had enough interviews with this kind of stereotypical stuff about how did you get in the art, but then the reason I kind of came across you, I mean, I already was a fan of your work, I was already following you, but the reason we kind of connected is because you recently done a kind of post on motivation in general, just being able to stay prioritized on task, how to learn, how to push yourself past those barriers. Was that something you approached on Instagram because you were getting a lot of people asking you for inspiration?
Yes, definitely. And this is something that I really like studying and discussing with friends as well. So mainly the more busy I get, like in life in general, or even at work, it seems that I have like more energy to produce more stuff, and this is called like momentum. And there's like a bunch of books into that. So I'm always trying to keep myself occupied in some ways, just to kind of keep the momentum going forward. But recently I started getting like bombarded with people asking me like, how do you have like time for doing all of that? And like, you have a kid now, you like work as a lead, which like it's like super time consuming. And I've been producing like a lot of content, a lot of like not only personal work, but also like personal projects. And like also like I also surf, I do exercises, I go to the gym, like I do a lot of stuff. And I was like, yeah, maybe I should start like expressing myself in this regard a little bit more. And then I did like that big post with probably like 10 or 12 images, like a bunch of text. And it was funny because I got like such a really good response from that. Like, and you is one of those cases, like wanting me to jump into your podcast and record this. So it's awesome. And I love talking about that. And this is something that I've been exploring myself a little bit more too. And like the more I discuss it, the more I learn, and I like improve my techniques and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I mean, talking about momentum, I would definitely praise to that. I mean, I feel like I have a good work ethic, and I feel I can be productive when I need to be. But I think the problem I've had is that since I left my last career to repurpose myself into games, not having a full-time job since then, or having a lot of work to do, being a student, of course, also, there's times when momentum is lacking because you don't have the huge workload a lot of people will have, or push yourself. So I feel when I was working, I was definitely motivated, but when I came out of work and I have been unemployed for a couple of years because I was learning, getting back into that momentum is very hard for me. And you talk about momentum, is it a thing where you find that as you bring on work, it just critically just increases over time, that you will do more and more, like a kind of snowball effect?
Exactly. Yeah. And like, and definitely, even it's the same if you start working out and then you want to get back into it like super hard, like especially the first few weeks. If you go back and relate to a wheel, like the first few pushes on a wheel to start making it like like cycle around, it's like the hardest one. Once that thing is moving, it's like super easy to just maintain it. So that's why it's so hard to get back into it.
Yeah, because we talk about, I mean, even when I was starting back in the day sketching, it was the blank page, right? For me, for you, it's the open file and ZBrush that's empty, but it's the same thing. You have the fear of the undone. You know, you don't want to even start. Like the fear of starting, I think, is almost more intense than actually finishing. And then I take it with you that it's a thing where you will just push yourself to get started within projects.
Yeah, definitely. And well, I've learned throughout the years that I need to be doing something to feel accomplished. So
Yeah,
it's sometimes like it's not even like pushing myself to get something done or just to get something started. It's just like allowing myself to do whatever. And that means sometimes like right now I'm actually messing up with Arduinos and like doing a little bit like coding and programming. I'm not an engineer. I'm not a programmer. I'm not any of that shit. But I do like messing around with it. So I'm like allowing myself to do it. And sometimes I don't feel like doing art. And in the past, I used to push myself to keep doing it. And of course, I needed to do that in order to land a gig and all of that stuff, like to build a portfolio and like to improve my art. And it's not that I don't need to do it anymore. I still need to keep pushing myself in the art field, but I can allow myself now. I have a little bit of uh, freedom to explore like different areas too, because my position allows me to do so. It's more like if I don't feel like doing something, I want to do something else. But yes, if you really don't feel like doing art, but you need to finish something for your portfolio or whatever it is, just like sit and start doing. And this is something that me and Raf, we always talk about. It's like just get something started and like just keep pushing. And then after maybe like 5-10 minutes, you're going to start to feel great. And then your mind's going to be spinning on like different directions. And then you don't feel like, I don't want to do this anymore, right? So you get into the vibe, into the mood of working.
yeah. I think I felt that same vibe. Is that when I even start a task, you know, I'll sit and sit. I'll say to myself, I'll sit for 5 minutes and just push myself, and then within 5 minutes, I look back at the clock. It's been 50 minutes. So I
Yeah,
feel like once I get started, I can totally get lost in a task. But I
exactly.
think the fear of starting is always powerful. But then you talked about prioritization as well, and I know I'm totally guilty of this. Is that you know, you talk about guys who still watch TV shows or play video games.
Yes.
You know, you can prioritize those things. If you know, if you need to be learning, then you need to be in ZBrush more than playing like, you know, God of War or Grand Theft Auto or whatever. But hey,
Definitely, yeah.
yeah. So can you talk even a bit about that? How you talk about, you know, the
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
priorities you have in your life? Yeah.
Yeah, of course. So this is a little bit tricky because after I did that post, like I started getting like a bunch of messages saying like, "Oh, you can have spare time because you already have a gig." Yeah, that's true. So I think the main thing is to notice and uh, to take note, like in general, is first and foremost, you need to understand where you are and what are your needs, right? So, what are your highest priorities right now? So, if you are unemployed, your main priority should be one of the main priorities should be land a gig, right? Find a job. Uh, so, in order to do that, and then you escalate, like, in order to do that, you need to have a better portfolio. In order to have a better portfolio, you need to produce more artwork. In order to produce better artwork, you need to like get better in your organic modeling, whatever it is, right? And then you build, like you start from like the goal, and then you build your strategy of achieving that. That's one way of doing it. But anyways, let's say like in my example, like I can use myself as an example. I'm already employed. I'm like doing fine at work. I have a family. I have a kid. I have 2 dogs, and I work late sometimes. And me, I have a few goals, and I'm gonna share some of them. Like one of them is definitely get better in art. Definitely like uh, improve myself as a lead. So there are like several areas that I could do that, not only on the technical skills, but also like on the management side. Anyway, so I'm like reading books and I'm doing here and there improvement to that.
Yeah.
I also want to take care of my body because I want to be able to do stuff with my kid. I want to stay healthy, etc. Right. So these are my one of my like a few goals that I have, and these are my priorities. So in my case, what I do is that first I need to be 100% at work because that's like the most important thing that I do on a daily basis. So I make sure that I sleep well, and then I go rested to work. So I'm executing tasks and like I'm being 100% present over there. Right. After that's done, I get back home, usually 7, 8 at night. And then I want to make sure my family is okay. So I take care of my kid, I take care of my wife, I play with them, I do stuff here and there. After my kid goes to bed, I have some spare time. What I'm going to do with my spare time, I can either stay with my wife or I can do whatever I want. Like sometimes we have like our date nights, but sometimes she works from home too, and like it's a breather to have the kid going to bed. So she definitely like feels free to do her stuff as well. So that's the moment, like maybe like 2 or 3 hours that are decisive, like in my in my journey. So how I'm gonna spend those 2 3 hours, right? I'm gonna definitely spend like towards my goals. So sometimes I do watch TVs here and there. Sometimes I do play video games, especially when like a new game comes out. But mainly, I only have like those like few hours left. So why don't I spend those towards achieving my goals and like pushing myself? Like, so I'm gonna usually do art or do something related to my career. It's not because I feel like it's more like because I enjoy doing those too, and of course I feel like I have to do those as well.
Of
But
course.
but
But
it's
then
not
I
like a
suppose,
burden.
yeah,
It's more like I want to keep doing it. And
yeah, yeah. No, I mean, because there was even a time in your career when you would have, I mean, before you came to America, like you would have also had a different work ethic that because people say like, oh, you've got a gig now, you don't have to worry as much. But then there was a time in your career when you were worrying, you were like, where is my next work coming from? What am I going to do next? And you know, it's not like you've had a gig since you left school or you've had a gig forever. Like, there was a time in your life when, you didn't have a job, you didn't have a path. So people saying like, oh, now you can't, now you don't have to worry. But like, you have had to worry in the past. So, I mean, like,
oh, and I still have to worry. It's not like I'm like employed
of
forever,
course.
right?
Yeah, you need to keep relevant. There's people out there who are maybe younger than you or hungrier who want the job you have, so you've got to compete against them as well as everybody in the studio or people in the area. And
Yes,
so I don't get why people can be so flippant and saying, "Oh no, you don't need to worry." Of course you need to worry.
yeah,
Like everybody, you want to keep your job, you want to stay good at your craft. So, and like Graf was saying, there's always new programs, there's always new techniques coming out, stuff you need to
exactly,
keep on
yeah,
top of. And then within the games industry, engines and everything will change so fast that you need to then learn that and learn that pipeline. So, it's a constant evolution of your skills that always needs to be in check. So yeah, and like you said, the prioritizer, like you work really long hours, but you still make the time to push yourself when you come home. So I think that's the mindset you kind of need to have, right, to be in this industry, especially at the top where you are at the one of the biggest developers in the country.
yeah. So yeah, thanks. But like, it can sound like I'm like a crazy workaholic and I'm always tired and stuff like that. And it is not true. Like, I have a lot of energy, and probably because of the momentum, I don't feel like I'm burning myself anymore. Uh, and like during the weekends, I go exercise. I go like I went out surfing, and I do all of like a bunch of like crazy activities. So it can sound that I'm like constantly always working, but I'm not always working. I'm also studying, and I have a lot of pleasure in learning new things and studying. That's like my hobby. uh, I don't like. I do play video games, for example. I always mention video games because it's like so big in this industry. Since we
Yeah, of
all
course.
yeah
Yeah.
yeah, but I like I do like playing here and there, but I'm not like obsessed with video games. I'm more obsessed with learning new things. So that's my
Yeah, of
obsession,
course.
like pretty much.
Yeah, like rather than obviously play a game for 6 or 7 hours, you would only maybe play it for an hour or two, and then move back to something else, move back to learning, move back to your family. So, but I think it's the balance, right? That's what people struggle with is
Yes.
setting that time and being strict with yourself. That I'm only going to play, this one level. I'm not going to play this level. Then keep playing.
Yeah,
Same with
maybe
working out. Yeah, yeah.
maybe that's one of the reasons too, because I'm not that balanced, even though it sounds like him. I'm
Okay, yeah.
not. So I'm kind of, whenever I start something, I get obsessed with it. So if I start playing video games and I really enjoy it, I would try to beat the game as soon as possible so I can stop playing it, because I get like,
Oh yeah.
so I don't even play. I only play, like, for example, like Spider-Man came out. I love Spider-Man, so I played a little bit here and there. It didn't do it for me, so I then stopped playing.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
didn't
No,
like try to push, like, it kept playing, like, oh, let's
yeah.
beat the game, whatever, right? So
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, I mean, but then again, it is again about prioritizing those tasks and trying to think that, even though you've paid for the game, you're like, oh, I need to finish it. You're like, no, I mean, it served its purpose. I have other things I could be focusing on that would be better served.
hmm
And then again, it's just something that you see more with people who are messaging and like they have maybe priorities otherwhere outside of their art. I mean, how do you feed back to students about how to really prioritize their tasks? I mean, how do you think they should really be structuring their kind of time as opposed to like how you maybe structure yours or how it has been in the past?
sure. I think the first thing, everybody needs to understand, like, how they manage their time. And if they want to play, let me just back up a little bit. There is no shame in playing video games or watching TV shows or like slacking or whatever, right? I don't think
Yeah,
people should be ashamed of doing that. It's more like they should understand, if they are doing that, they're not going to be doing something else. I mean, it's very obvious, but we don't think too much about that. So if you are spending every night just watching TV, you're not gonna get extra work done, and that's fine. Like, if you are fine with not doing extra work, it's fine. Like, so just don't complain that you don't have time, right? Because time, everybody does have. The thing is that how you spend the time you have, right? So I think, so that's the first thing. Everybody needs to understand that. And I've struggled with this concept quite a lot, because sometimes I would feel like completely burned out, and I would still keep push myself. Like, that's back in the day in Brazil. I wanted
yeah,
to live here. I wanted to get a job in a big studio, whatever. So times were very different, and the difficulty level for us to come from abroad, it's like crazy high. But I don't want to get too
yeah.
much into that today.
No,
But
of course, yeah.
yeah. But anyways, so uh, I would be pushing myself, like, to I get like sick, right? So it was like obviously too much. So after I understood that it's fine if I don't do personal work, it's fine if I don't do this and that, and then the only thing that's gonna happen is that I won't have any personal work. I won't be developing any skills, and that's fine. Like there are times for that too, for me. Anyway, so, like, now answering your question, I think, like, besides understanding this concept, which is simple, but you really need to think about it. We all need to, uh, how can I put it?
Maybe just be mindful of your time, something like that.
Yeah, but yeah, definitely. But uh,
I mean, you were talking about your times when you were making yourself sick back in the day. I mean, like you said, the priority then is to shift your focus and say, right, well, my priority is I need a job. I want to work in America. I want to work at this big developer. So then your focus narrows, and you have to make sure that your time is focused more then because
yes,
you want to get this job. So then everything else kind of falls by the wayside. It's what you were kind of talking about, right? Yeah.
yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
So the problem that people seem to have is that, I don't know, like, maybe they just don't understand this question, like this concept
Yeah.
very well. Yeah, I'm trying to elaborate here, but
Yeah.
I don't have like a definitive answer on how people think about this.
Yeah, I think it's difficult for a lot of people to really prioritize tasks sometimes because it feels like an overwhelming journey, right? It seems like
Yeah.
if you were to say you were going to be working at Sony Santa Monica in however many years, you'd probably say, oh no way, it seems like such an impossible task. But for you, it was a very narrow focus, and the time you spent, you broke those, like when you talked about breaking down the stages of learning, like you were like, well, I want to work at Sony Santa Monica, so I need to get my skills better. Right? To get my skills better, I need to do this. To do this, I need to do this. So I think making those larger goals
hmm
smaller and more manageable is something that is also about prioritizing your time, right?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah,
So, and also breaking those into smaller goals makes them attainable. So, like, working towards like a big, and by the way, working at Sony Santa Monica as a lead, that's not my end goal. So I'm still like, I still feel the same passion and desire to keep growing as I had like 10 years ago.
right.
But so having like smaller goals, like put them closer to you, and then it feels like attainable. So it feels like, oh, if I do a little bit of work here, I'm gonna achieve that, and then you keep like growing like step by step. That's that kind of stuff. And yeah, but I still feel the same way. Maybe it's not like 100% art focused anymore because I'm expanding on this management side and on like talking to people and like developing other skills too. So maybe that's one of the reasons I don't prioritize art 100%. Maybe it's still like at 80% level, but the other 20% I'm filling it up with like all of these crazy projects that I've been working on. But I still feel like I have so much to grow and so much to learn. I still feel that I'm young enough to keep pushing myself, and that keeps me moving.
Yeah, I mean, and then definitely as well, you've talked about books that you've enveloped that have kind of trained you to work towards this goal, or talked about momentum. So what kind of, is there any like references or things you can talk about that have helped you through that process? Is there any books you could recommend, or seminars, anything that you've maybe experienced that has helped you push past that, has helped you be more productive?
Yeah, and in fact, I'm terrible with names, and I have some.
Okay.
I can send you a link of like a few books that I've read. But
Yeah, of course, that's
the
fine.
one that I'm currently reading right now, it's called Leadership. So it's just about leadership in general. I don't have the book with me here right now. Yeah, it's not here. But yeah, I'm not a. I actually gather thoughts and like knowledge from like different sources. So I do watch a lot of like YouTube videos, and I read books, and I do a lot of stuff like that. So I don't.
Is it a lot of kind of just motivational stuff, or?
Yeah, yeah, and I don't keep a lot of like track of everything that I read. Only the like the ones that like really strikes me, hits me like hard. So
yeah, I'm actually a big fan of Gary Vaynerchuk just now. Gary V, he's actually
huge
big
one.
inspiration for me. So
I'm always watching his stuff. But if you ask me for a specific video, I might remember one, but I don't remember like everything. Like I just try to focus and to memorize the big concepts.
Yeah, of course, definitely. And then, so how has your journey then, or your priorities then shifted since you've been at Sony? Is that something that, like you said, you're roughly unchanged from where you were? You're still pushing towards another goal that is past. So, in essence, you feel it's now obtainable to get to this position. Is there something else that you feel now that is your next focus? Like anything you're using to keep yourself motivated while you're now a lead?
So my main priority right now is just to make sure at work, right? Just to make sure my team is happy and producing work. So that's my number one job. So it's not easy, like dealing with like different departments and all of that stuff. It's tricky. So, but my main focus is to see my team producing as much work as possible. They are happy with their tasks and all of that stuff. So that keeps me moving forward at work for now. And just because it's such a difficult task, and do it like several reasons, but I do have a lot of like other goals outside work and the things that I keep pushing myself, but I don't feel comfortable talking about those at this moment because it's still
of course.
very very up in the air what my next step's gonna be. But
of course.
I still pretend and still intend to stay at Sony
of course,
for quite some time. So
not leaking all your secrets at the moment. That's fine. So yeah, when it comes to structured learning, like, what do you feel? Maybe even towards your speciality, which is character work, because your character work is incredible. It's so intense. I mean, even we were working with Raf. He was talking about you and Igor. Just your stuff is just phenomenal. And so how do you approach, or how did you approach learning? Were you heavily, like, say motivation, where you're focusing your task mostly just on anatomy and ZBrush? Were you focusing on sculpts? How were you kind of prioritizing your learning for people, maybe people who are wanting to get into character work like myself, and you know, want to know how you kind of structure your learning at the start? How do you learn?
Sure. I think since you mentioned Raf and Igor, like the biggest advice, no matter what you're doing, I can always give to people is to find a group of artists and get together and like get yourself around people better than you. I think that's number one, no matter what you're doing. but we can talk about that later if you want to. But
Of
anyways,
course, yeah.
going back to your question. So there are like several areas that you need to get good at in order to produce good game art character work. So it's very tricky. So in my case, I started with studying very basic software modeling, software, poly by poly, all that stuff. Like, so I learned 3D Max. So I have a huge background in working with 3D Max. So I knew how to model pretty much anything. Not that it was good, but I could model anything using poly by poly or like face by face and all of that stuff, box modeling, all of those like old school techniques. So once I got good at it, uh, ZBrush came out. I think that was, well, actually, we have access to ZBrush at that time. It was 2005, 2006. So I jumped into it. I started learning a little bit here and there. And I was also doing traditional sculpting at that time. So anyway, like my journey itself, it's very all over the place. So sorry, I went a little bit like, oh, my mind was
No, it's
spinning a
fine.
little bit too off, but let me just go back and like try to make a list of
It's
things.
very early in the morning in Los Angeles at the moment. Like it's quite early. So yeah.
I barely just woke up like 5 minutes before the call, so I'm still a little bit too slow. So sorry about that,
Yeah,
but
it's all
anyway.
good. It's all good.
Yeah.
Okay.
So yeah, I didn't have time to have a coffee, but anyways,
Yeah.
all right. So first, you need to, if you want to produce game art, you need to have a solid package understanding, like Maya or Max or whatever. My tool of choice right now, it's Maya, because mainly all of the studios are using Maya, and that's what I'm more comfortable with. I started with 3D Max, like I said before, but I switched to Maya a couple years ago. So having these modeling knowledge, it's essential in order to understand all of the technical aspects of producing game art. So that's something that you need to have, like, no matter what. On top of that, you need to have a lot of art skills, like knowing anatomy, knowing design, proportions, and all of that stuff. And that's you usually get from studying sculpture or drawing, right? So that's one thing. Like, people spend too much time discussing sculpting, which I think there's like enough material on the internet, but I do think it's important to study sculpting as much as possible, either traditional or digital. Anyways, after that, there's also like more stuff that you need to study that people usually forget. So like texturing, I don't see a lot of people that are discussing the texturing procedure besides grabbing a bunch of photographs and just slapping on the model. And that's maybe one of the reasons why a lot of like texturing work from like newer folks sucks, because they don't put the proper time into it. I remember when I took a Jordan Shell class a couple years ago. He's one of the makeup effects artists here in LA, one of like the big guys, and it was like a latex mask class. So he sculpted the mask in clay, and then he molded and cast it in latex, and then he paint with the airbrush. And the final class was about, like, the final day was about painting the mask. And he was like, dude, you guys always rush whenever you are painting, because if you take notes of your time, you spend maybe like 3, 4, 5 days or even more just sculpting. And then you want to get the stuff painted in like 1 day, or maybe in 1 hour, maybe like in 30 minutes, right? So just don't rush it. Make sure you are spending the proper amount of time in the painting as well. And I take texturing the same way. Although with the use of like newer tools like Substance Painter and Mari, you can achieve like really good results right off the bat. They are not great. I mean, they are good, but they are not great. Like, in order to make them great, that takes time. That takes time and effort, and you need to really spend time pushing all the details and all of like the composition of the colors and all of that stuff. So make sure you are also studying texturing. I'm rambling, but here, make sure
No, of course.
sure you are studying texturing as well.
Yeah, I think sculpture obviously is one of the main focuses, but then I have heard people talk about how people then let their models down through the texture not being as as good as the sculpture stuff. Like, they're like, oh, it's a great sculpt, but then the texture is so subpar that it lets the model down. Like, all that time you spent sculpting something
Yes.
is then let down because of the bad texturing.
Yes, and in my yeah, you're completely right. And in my opinion, there's even more to it, right? So of course, a sculpture would take maybe like 60-70% of your time whenever you study, but just don't neglect texturing. But also, like on top of that, you need to have some understanding of shaders and materials if you want to work with games. Maybe you are not the most technical one. Some people like myself, I do enjoy learning about that a little bit more than I should or more than I need, let's say.
Yeah.
But so I'm not saying that you need to have like a crazy solid understanding of shaders and how they work, but you need to have like a grasp, right? You need to at least have a very basic understanding of how that stuff works. On top of that, you need to understand how materials work and also how hair cards work, for example. So if in order to create fur, in order to create like hair, beard, and all of that stuff. But
Yeah.
of course, this is all overwhelming. So people just focus on like, yeah, blah blah blah. Let's just focus on the sculpting, and
Yeah.
that should be the goal. Not the goal. That should be your first step for sure. But just don't neglect all of the other things. So if you are taking a small project to completion, make sure you are spending the appropriate time during all of these stages.
Yeah, of course. And I think, Rafa talked about that briefly as well, where he said that, those things, it's good to have those, like you said, that basic knowledge, but don't be afraid, because when you get into a studio, that stuff can almost be taught at a lead level where, if your sculpture is bad, that's something that the guys around you can't really teach. As long as you have a really good foundation in sculpting, then
Yes,
when you get in a studio, you can learn extra bits of the pipeline, like rig and
definitely. Yeah, yeah.
animation. Yeah. So, and so then that'd be interesting as well to talk about you just even briefly, because you have a past in traditional sculpting.
Yes.
And obviously Raf is the same. He does a lot of traditional sculpting as well. So you feel, obviously, I mean, dumb question, but it'd be great to hear you talk about it, that traditional sculpture has helped you within your 3D, like in ZBrush.
Oh yeah, definitely. And in fact, me and Raf, we used to share a studio back in Brazil. Not sure if he told you about that, but
Oh, no.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So back in Brazil, I think it was like back in 2008. Once like we got to meet each other. I don't remember why, but uh, we ended up joining a studio, and we ended up sharing this space with a couple more artists, and we would go over there every night or maybe like 3 times a week and just sculpt just for fun and just like share. And it was more like a club, so we would be just sculpting and like talking and discussing things and discussing like digital projects as well. And
Wow.
that
Yeah.
was one of my very special moments in my career and in my journey that I can't forget because it was so special and so like it helped me so much. That's one of the reasons I always tell people, like, just get together, like find a bunch of friends, find a group of people that are passionate too, and like just get together and just get some shit done.
Yeah. No, I mean,
But
I definitely feel that's we talked about this earlier, about that, like, you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with,
yes,
and I think that is very true. Yeah.
I completely agree with that.
Yeah.
So traditional sculpting, this is something that I still do and I still enjoy and I still love sculpting with my hands. And traditionally, the main thing for me, it's like the more I think about it, the more difficult it gets to explain. Like I used to say like, oh, this is like real, so you see like with your own eyes and stuff like that. But the more I really think about why traditional sculpting is important, the trickiest it gets, because I feel like I'm kind of understanding it more, and but it's almost like a rabbit hole. Like the more I open like this Pandora box of like possibilities, like the trickiest get. But on a on a low level, on a high level, I should say, it's
Yeah.
it's it's mainly because you are now, well, first and foremost, you don't have Control Z's, you don't have any like easy from the digital tools to help you out. So you really need to think about what you're doing and what you're trying to accomplish and trying to achieve with those forms, and that kind of slows you down a lot. And then with the use of the tools, you cut pieces off the model, and with the use of your hands, you put pieces back on. So you can do additive process, and you can do like just the sculpting part, which is just like taking off part pieces too. So you have both. It's pretty similar to the computer in a way, but
Yeah.
I think just like the main thing, it's so slow compared to ZBrush. So it doesn't mean that you're gonna produce art in less time. It means that the process is slower, which is funny, uh, because although it's slower, it doesn't mean that you're gonna like block out a piece in less time. In ZBrush, we usually, because it's so fast, you usually spend so much time just messing around. It's funny, like the more I sculpt in ZBrush, and the more I think about it, like the slower I'm trying to get. I'm like consciously trying to like move slower with my brush, with my pen, in order to produce better work, in order to be more precise and more concise about the decisions that I'm making. So that's the main difference, I feel like, and that's why that helps you so much, is to really think about what you're doing. You don't have Control Z. Of course, it's a real model, so you can like lit with like real lights. You can photograph. You have like this spatial sense, that real perspective and all of that stuff, and it's real, right? That's one of the reasons I think VR is picking it up like so fast, because you feel immersed and you feel like that's the real thing, and in some ways it does feel like traditional sculpting, because the piece you're sculpting feels real. There's not like a glass in front of you rotating the model and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But
No,
I
I mean,
think
like
there's
even
sorry to cut you. Like I think
on
there's
you go, on you go.
so much more to it. And the more I study drawing, and the more I study traditional sculpting, the more I read about it. And I spent like the past 3 months just drawing on my free time, mainly drawing and studying like different approaches to drawing and painting and all of that stuff. This is also like a passion of mine. Like I definitely want to get into oil paintings at some point. But anyway, the more I study it, the more like things click to me, and how all of these things are related on a deeper level. But I haven't had time to properly elaborate on those thoughts yet. So
I think it's a thing we talked about again with Raf, where he was talking about, you know, if you're initially just learning and like at ground zero, like right at the start, he's like, you know, focus on ZBrush if you want to do character stuff, and then just get really good at sculpting in there. Then once you get a gig, or then once you feel, you know, you're good enough, then of course you can then split your time into other things like sculpture, like drawing. You know, he's like, you don't have to learn everything at once. You know, you don't have to be, you know, throwing your time between, you know, 3 or 4 different things.
Yes.
I think as you start in the industry, you have such a narrow focus. Then as you mature in the industry, it then widens, and becomes, you know, more takeative in of everything around you. Like you said, more sculpture stuff, more drawing, more painting, and they all feed back into a core skill set, which is just being an artist.
Definitely. And I couldn't agree more with that. And this is something that me and Raf, we always discuss in person too. And that goes back to the priorities, right? So if your biggest priority right now is just to become a digital artist, you should be spending most of your time doing digital art. And that's kind of obvious. But again, you see like people like us doing traditional sculpting, doing like, even me, like whenever I post, like I studied like Python like a couple of years ago, and I at that time I was posting a lot of like Python related stuff, and people were like, "Oh, now that's one of the prerequisites to be to understand Python in order to become a character." I was like, no, like that, like we need to be very careful with the stuff that we post, because so it's not like that. Like maybe one of my focus at that moment was that I needed to learn some Python because of work, and that was actually true. But it doesn't mean that like you need to learn all of these things at the same time, because it's impossible. So just don't get overwhelmed. Just like stay focused on your path. I think that should do it.
Yeah, definitely. And then obviously moving forward now, you're talking about painting, you're talking about these extra skills. I think it's just one of these things where you look to your heroes, or you look to guys who inspire you in the industry, and then you look at their skill set, right, and you're like, well, my skill set needs to match their skill set. I need to be like that. I need to be as good as them. But then I think for something for me, years in the making was that rather than emulate another person, you need to be your own version of your own artist. And I think you need to own your own identity, when it comes to style, when it comes to procedure, it comes to pipeline. Everybody you work with has a different way of working, right? No two people have the same workflow, the same way of approaching characters or approaching stuff. So I think students also need to focus on just being their own version of an artist as opposed to trying to copy or be where you are now, because by the time they get to where you are now, you'll be years ahead of them and doing different stuff. So I don't think following trends is the best way. I think it's always comes back to foundations and having a very good solid base underneath you.
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, I completely agree with that. And on top of that too, I don't think you need to reinvent the wheel, right? So if something works, if you see like someone created like a formula or like a recipe for achieving something, you should at least try that first and see if that works for you. And if it does, don't like spend time trying to reinvent that. Like just use that and like grab something else from like different people and then start building your own skill set.
Yeah, and I definitely feel that's something that we talked about again with Raf, and that they were saying where people also get obsessed with stuff like micro details where they're learning muscles and they try to learn individual muscle groups or names or how different muscles connect to each other, and that stuff is also great to learn. But then your main focus, I think, at the start should definitely, I mean, you probably might feel different, I don't know, but should be just shape language. Should just be building or replicating those shapes as opposed to trying to go below the skin, learn the connecting tissue and stuff like that, the bone structure. Yeah.
Oh yeah, definitely. Like, and I'm like, again, anatomy is something that I'm like, I just released a book on anatomy. Not sure if you've seen it, but like the main thing with anatomy is that you need to work on your primary forms first, and then secondary forms, and then tertiary forms, and so on and so forth. If the primary forms, if the structure of your house is not quite there yet, it's not going to be able to receive the secondary stuff, right? So if the scaffolding of your building it's not properly set, you're setting up yourself for failure. So don't even for me on anatomy, there's like it gets so deep and into the intricacies of every like little single thing. So I need to step back and see like, oh, all right, so where am I at right now? And then what's the next step that I can dive? Like how deep can I go into it? And then I go a little bit deeper than my level, and then I move forward. So this is like, again, like step by step, like day by day type of mentality.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, like the journey of 1,000 miles starts with a single step, right? But then when you look back over a year, you realize you're halfway up the staircase. So it's always a thing about just a little bit every day, and then you slowly will just chip away at that until eventually you're at a point where people always say that, or I've always said, is that you shouldn't compare yourself to another artist or anybody else's journey, but maybe compare yourself to a past version of yourself. So look where you were 2 years ago. How have you changed as an artist? How have you grown? Because that journey is then more personal to you, more appropriate to you than looking at like you or Raf or Igor's journey and say like, oh, these guys, look at them now and they're working at Sony. But then there's a time when you weren't working at Sony, right? You were back in Brazil, you were doing your own thing. So you shouldn't always look to people to say like, oh, I need to be like him, I need to be there now, like I need to be. And I think it's like there's so much of that in the industry just now where students, including myself, look at people at such a high level and say, oh, I need to be working there in the next couple of weeks, or I need to have that job. So just in closing, like your thoughts on maybe just student mentality and portfolios and stuff like that. But where do you feel like maybe students go wrong, or something you wish more students knew?
Yeah, before answering that, I do want to touch on something like you mentioned, like step by step, like so there's a good book on that. I just remember because I read it like a couple months ago. It's called Atomic Habits. It's definitely like a must read for everyone trying to improve their habits and all of their habits in general. And it's mostly about like small steps combined becomes like a bigger thing. And it's such a great book. So it's a must read.
I'll follow the links below anyway. So,
okay, cool. So answering the question, or Can you just repeat it real quickly?
Yeah. So just basically, mostly, and just in closing, to just kind of summarise what we've talked about. Where do you feel? What's your best advice for students going forward? For people listening to this podcast, if they wanted to, if they want to be a character artist, what's the one thing you feel maybe
They're
they
trying
do
to
wrong,
mimic. Yeah. Okay.
or you want them to do more of, or you think they should focus on moving forward?
All right. Oh, and you also mentioned like they are trying to mimic like the big artists who like in the industry
Yeah,
and
of
stuff like
course.
that.
Yeah.
So on that sense, whenever I tell my journey is very crazy and like it's very unique in the sense that I've was in the makeup effects before I was running my own studio. I've worked in advertising and all of that. I don't think people try to mimic that because it's so crazy. But uh, the main thing I want people to focus on whenever they hear my journey and my story, it's mainly that I'm like always pushing forward and I'm always taking myself to the next level. And like whatever it is, like if and I always dream big too. So for example, whenever I had at the time that I had a studio back in Brazil, a makeup effects studio, it was something that almost like nobody was doing. There was like maybe like one or two people doing it. And in Brazil, it's like a country that doesn't produce a lot of like makeup effects content, not at that time. But anyways, I was like, dude, I'm gonna be like the Stan Winston here in Brazil. I'm gonna try to educate people about it. I'm gonna try to like go to all of the like the TV shows and like start introducing like makeup effects and like real magic stuff like animatronics and all of that shit. And after like a while, I started doing that, and I was like dreaming like crazy big, and I was doing like 100% taking myself to the next level, and also like my studio. So after a while, I started receiving like requests and quotes for like doing stuff like that. I was like, oh, maybe we don't have a Predator movie in Brazil because there's nobody doing a Predator, and maybe
Yeah.
since there's nobody doing a Predator, there are no directors willing to do a Predator here in Brazil. Like that's kind of mindset. I
Yeah.
always think that there's always something that we can do in order to achieve our goals. I don't like complaining about things too much, and so that's the main thing I think people should focus whenever they hear my journey. And for the students, whenever like they see the artist they're trying to mimic or things that they should focus on, it should always be like just try to be the best version of you. And this is kind of cliche, but uh like if you feel like, oh, I'm a bit more analytical than my friend, whatever, like take that into your advantage. Me myself, for example, I was very good at maths back in school. I was terrible in art. So how can I turn like this, how can I make art something that I can use my logical skills? So the way I came up with like the way I actually approach it, it's more like logical. So it's a bunch of pieces together that I just combine it. And then anatomy, for example, I know all of the pieces. It's like a big Lego that I'm like putting together. And the more I learn about anatomy, the smaller the pieces get. But it's a very logical approach, and I take that into my advantage. Like some people have issues with the logical stuff, so I'm like, all right, so I'm gonna be a character artist, a little bit more technical than others, and I'm gonna like try to exceed like myself in that, like try to be the best as I can. So um, I, like if I compare myself to Raf, for example, like his mind works very different than mine in some areas. So uh, like there's no sense I'm gonna be frustrated, right? Or if I compare myself to some other artists too. Uh, so compare yourself. So whenever I look at people's work and I see like, all right, this is so good. Like, how is this guy doing that? Like, I need to take my art into that. That's great. That's one thing that everybody should do it and should be constantly comparing themselves in order to like have like real motivation to keep improving. But I don't exactly need to follow the same steps as the guy was doing that to in order to achieve that. Sometimes things clicked for me differently, like I was saying, like the puzzle pieces and stuff like that. So it's very tricky, but uh,
I mean, just take those things to motivate you. Don't use them maybe to bring you down, or think that, oh, that guy's so amazing. You know, how am I ever going to be? Just look at his technique and be like, oh, well, I can integrate that into my workflow, or I can make this different. Like, it doesn't have to be a negative thing. You can use it as a positive.
Yeah, here's the thing. I never felt like negative about any of those things. Like I hear people talking about that all the time. Like, oh, I feel so bad when I see his artwork. Like I don't fully understand it. Like honestly, I always felt like amazed. Like, oh, if someone can do it, I can do it too, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Well, the reason for like studying the journey, like his artist journey, it's more like, oh, maybe so he gathered like some knowledge, or he did like he had some experiences in different areas that I haven't had yet. So I might need though to follow some of those steps in order to produce that type of work, because I don't have the background or anyways. So I always felt like amazed and like intrigued and like pretty happy, right? Yeah, it's funny. I do understand though. Uh, well, I don't fully understand, but I get the sense of why people get frustrated because they wanted to be as good as those guys and they are not. But that's more like ego problems. I feel like frustration comes from thinking that you are better than you actually are, and then you are capable of doing things that you are not capable yet. So, yeah. Yes.
yeah. No, I mean, I definitely, I feel that as a problem, and I think that people just need to take a breath and sit back and just focus on, you know, what they have as almost like it's like the gratitude stuff, right? People sometimes write down like things that they're grateful for in their
Sure.
life, and it's glass half empty, half full. I think is the difference in looking at, well, that's great that they're accomplished and they have this career. How can I emulate that? How can I take those pieces and make it part of my journey? Know that, you know, they're so good, I want to give up. And yeah, no, you're 100% right. I think you need to just be positive in your journey and make sure that you're focusing on your own steps and your own process, and less on others. So yeah, I agree, man. It's been
Yeah,
great.
and it's awesome, right? Like you can do anything. I always felt like I can do anything. I can be whatever I want to be. And this is something that I really enjoy, and that's the stuff I like about video games is that you play this game, and which is called life, and you can choose like your destiny, like, and the things that you cannot choose, whatever you cannot choose anyway. So why don't bother, like don't even spend time about thinking about that stuff. Like if it's out of your control, like fuck it, like whatever. But the things that you can control, right? So like if you want to get healthy, just get fucking healthy, right? So
Yeah, yeah,
like don't eat crap food. It's all on you. Oh, but you have like this problem or like this disease. Yeah, well, I'm sorry. Let's take care of that first, and
yeah,
then you move on to the next step. But like make sure that the things that you are in control, you are in control.
yeah,
Of course, it's not
100%.
that easy, but well, it's
No,
easy.
no, but
It's easier to
I
say
think
than,
it's,
but
yeah, of course, but the advice is solid, man.
yeah,
You've kind of hit the nail on the head.
yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to let Glauco go because I'm conscious of his time. He needs to get to his work at Sony. So we're just gonna end it there. But yeah, it was great. It was, I think we hit every point we really needed to hit, and just thank you very much, Glauco, for coming on. It's been an absolute honor talking to you.
Completely my pleasure. Thanks for having me here, and yeah,
Yeah. Thanks, man. Thank you very much.
thank you.
Stay tuned, you guys, for more episodes, more talks. Check us out on all the different social medias. We're on YouTube, most podcast services, Spotify, Soundcloud, all that kind of stuff. Make sure to leave a like. Any questions you can leave below. I'll leave Glauco's links. He'll send me a couple through. And any further questions, just leave them in the comments. I'll see if we can get to them. And yeah, thanks for tuning in. We'll be back here with another episode very soon. And apart from that, have a nice day. And thanks, guys.